All right, it's time to talk basketball during the NBA offseason. Once again, I'm Jose Salviati, editor at thepeachbasket.net. He's Steve Purciello, a longtime educator, vice principal, high school coach, and athletic director. And this is the 13 Rules Random NBA Thoughts Overtime podcast. During the offseason, Steve and I have been discussing NBA stars, mostly from the 60s and 70s, by talking about them with someone who's watched them, which has been really cool. We've got a long list of NBA greats that we've talked about. We'll leave that in the description because the list is too long. But today, we have a real special show. Instead of discussing NBA greats from the past, we're talking to an actual NBA world champion from 1978, which is pretty incredible to me. Kevin Grevey was Mr. Basketball, in the state of Ohio in 1971, two-time SEC Player of the Year. His number 35 is retired at the University of Kentucky. He was drafted in the first round at number 18 by the then Washington Bullets, and along with teammates Bob Dandridge and the future Hall of Fame duo of Elvin Hayes and Wes Unseld, led the Bullets to the championship in 1978. Wow. Chatted a little bit, and let me tell you, I hope you stick around because this is some riveting conversation from somebody who's played the game and won at the highest level. Steve and I are thrilled to welcome to 13 Rules Kevin Grevey. Kevin, thank you for your time.
Hey, thank you, Jose. Steve, it's a pleasure to be on 13 Rules. This will be fun.
We're looking forward to it. We thought that a good way to start would be just by sharing your journey, right? I read a little bit about how you came to the NBA, how you came to love basketball, but I thought to level set, and I think it's different for everybody. Everybody's journey is so different and so unique. What was your journey like? When did you know that basketball was your future, and what led you there?
That's a great question. Obviously, I have great recall from growing up in a large family that was very competitive. My parents were competitive, good athletes. My mother was a real good tennis player, won the city championship many times. She would remind us all how good she was. And my dad played college basketball at Xavier. Growing up in a large family that was competitive, I had 5 brothers and sisters. It didn't matter if it was cards or if it was backyard basketball or sandlot baseball, we were going to get it on. And I just remembered loving sports. It wasn't necessarily just basketball. It was whatever the season brought. And I told my mother was very involved with the things that I was doing in school and after activities. And I would never come in on time for dinner. I'd be gone. I'd be playing on my bicycle or whatever. And she started getting on me really bad. She said, you know what? I'm not a short order cook when we eat dinner. And I'm tired of this. And I said, but Mom, I'm going to be a professional athlete. Wow. And I said, Mom, and when I become a pro, and I was thinking baseball at the time, not basketball. And I said, when I'm a pro, I'm going to buy you a fur coat. And it tempered her for about 2 seconds just now. Don't do that anymore. Don't be late for dinner. But even at that time, when I was 9, 10 years old, I was a dreamer and I thought I was going to be a pro. Joe Nuxall was from my hometown of Hamilton, Ohio. His son, Kim, was a very good friend of mine. I would go over to his house and there's Cincinnati Reds pitcher right there at the dinner table. And I'm like, hey, can I talk to your dad a little bit about the curveball that he has? And it was like really cool. And then when I would pitch Little League, if it was an off day for Joe Nuxall, he'd be in the stands. And as soon as I saw Joe Nuxall, man, you talk about overthrowing at 11-year-old. I was lucky I didn't throw my arm out, but I was like auditioning for Joe Nuxall. But of course, he could care less. It was pretty cool to have. And so if he can do it, daggone it, I can do it. And so I told Joe that well before he passed away. I said, you had as much to do with me being a pro. You have no idea the influence that you had on me because it made it feel real that my close friend's dad was a professional athlete. But Dad, he was like, he would catch me when I pitched. He would go out in the backyard. He was a very active father. You talk about a lucky guy to have parents who loved you, who were there for you, my brothers, sisters. And later on, I didn't want to let them down. I didn't want to embarrass them. So I think it kept me. It was like my guardian angel on my shoulder. Don't mess up. And my dad, he was a very good player. He had the hook shots, the set shots and stuff. And he was strong. He was 6'3", and I wasn't able to beat him until I was about 12 or 13 years old. And once I beat him, that was one of my first goals in life, was to beat my mother on the tennis court and beat my dad on the basketball court. And I accomplished that around 12 or 13 years old. So now you got to move on and start setting your bar a little bit higher. And I was fortunate to grow up in a Hamilton, Ohio, who really was a community looking after you. There was on the back of the Little League diamond dugout, and I would see it every day when I'd go play baseball. And it said, "No man stood so tall as when he stooped to help a little boy." And I'd see that, never thought anything of it. But daggone it, that community really lived it. And my parents' friends, my friends' parents, it was just great to grow up in that kind of environment. And they had the support, had your back, and it led right on into the high school. And I played for some great coaches, Adolph Rupp at Kentucky and Joe B. Hall at Kentucky. My first coach in the NBA was K.C. Jones, Gene Shue, Dick Motta. The year we won the world championship, he was my championship coach. And then at the end of my career, Don Nelson. But Steve, you left one out. The best coach I had was my high school coach, Marv McCollum. I'm telling you, this guy was so far before his time. When college coaches would come to recruit me, they would stay an extra day. I thought they were going to stay to see me play that second day of practice. No, they were staying to pick Marv McCollum's mind, and they loved his organization. They loved the things he was teaching, the defensive calls, how to come over a pick, how to play the right way. I learned at a very young age, my freshman year, how to play basketball properly and fit within a team. And it carried me a long way. It gave me all the fundamentals and the tools that I needed to go to Kentucky to play.
Yeah. How was Adolph Rupp? And when you got to Kentucky, how was interaction with him and so on?
I'm 71 years old, and I think Adolph Rupp passed away when he was 71. I like to think I'm a youthful 71. When Adolph Rupp was 65, was my freshman year at Kentucky, going into my sophomore year. He turned 65. And he seemed like he was 105 to me as a college kid. He was snake bitten with he was diabetic. He was really just shuffling around. He was having a hard time, but I was very intimidated with Adolph Rupp. He was gruff. He would never call me by my name. I didn't think he liked me. And I was a freshman and we're playing with the varsity. And they had a all SEC performer Kentucky did, a guy named Tom Parker, 6'7" left-hander. He was a version of me, but just a little bigger, a little stronger, and 3 years older. And by December, January, I was kicking his butt. And all of a sudden, Coach Rupp started noticing me. And he didn't really recruit me. It was Joe B. Hall. And I went to Kentucky with the hopes of playing for Joe B. Hall. All of a sudden, Coach Rupp started pulling me aside. He's lefty, or, "Hey, freshman, you're pretty good. You see what you're doing today in practice against Tom Parker, the SEC Player of the Year? I think you're better than him. What do you think?" And I'm like, "I don't know what I think, but I'm just out playing as hard as I can." He said, "You're better than him. You're going to be an SEC Player of the Year someday." Wow. And that was filling my ego. And so instead of avoiding him in the halls and avoiding him when I was seeking him out, I was loving this encouragement he was giving me. And somebody told me, I don't know if it was Mitch Kupchak or Ernie Grunfeld, but a couple guys my age, they said Ernie played for Ray Mears at Tennessee. He was part of that Ernie Bernie show. Mitch Kupchak played for Dean Smith, and I played for Coach Rupp and Joe B. Hall. And when we start talking about basketball and what the coaches had and the impact they had on you. And to the man, they all said that their coach empowered them. They gave them encouragement. And it was Ernie or Mitch that said, you're only going to be as good as the coach thinks you are. And if that coach doesn't really think that you can do this or do that, he's going to suppress you. And he's going to just put you in a pigeonhole and say, you're a good defender. That's what you do. Don't shoot, pass the ball. Man, I was constantly being encouraged, and I'd have a good practice. They say, you had a good practice, but you can be better. You can improve on this. You can do that. And that is feeding the beast. And I had that in high school. I never had a bully coach. I never had a coach that didn't think I could play or didn't have aspirations for me. I had a bad high school coach who was not teaching, who was berating me and take the love of the game away from me. I'm sure I wouldn't have achieved. And so at a young age, coaching is so important because at the end of the day, it's the love of the game. Why do you play? You played what, just to kill time? That's fine. There's a lot of other things you can do. But if you love the game, or if whatever it might be, whatever sport or whatever career or whatever endeavor, if you really enjoy it, you're going to deep dive it. You're going to feed for it and learn as much as you can. And I was so lucky to have parents that fed me, my high school coach. And now when you get to the NBA, they're not going to spoon feed you. But I had teammates that also helped me keep the passion and love for the game.
Before we get to the NBA, tell us about that last college game you ever played.
It's a kind of a bittersweet, Steve. I'm having a good day. Now you got to bring out the negative.
I did it on purpose.
Some people would say that should have been one of the greatest days of your life. I was a senior, my last game as a college player, playing for Kentucky. We advanced all the way to the championship game in 1975 to play UCLA in San Diego. And we had a clean sweep of Syracuse in the semifinals. UCLA beat Louisville in overtime. We were hoping for an all-Kentucky final. And sure enough, UCLA beat Louisville in overtime. So we're going to play UCLA in their backyard in San Diego. And on Easter Sunday, the day before the championship game on Monday night, Coach Wooden announced his retirement. I remember I was at the San Diego Zoo with my teammates and my family and my brothers and sisters. We're having a beautiful day in San Diego at the zoo after our practice. And we're right before we boarded the bus, here come the horde of media and the cameras. And they go to Coach Hall and I, and we're having this little mini press conference outside the bus in the zoo. And they said, what do you think about Coach Wooden retiring? His last game will be against you guys tomorrow night. I didn't know what to say. My jaw dropped. I'm like, holy cow. And Coach Hall handled the interview. He said, Coach Wooden's a wonderful coach. He can certainly decide when he wants to retire. But we're focusing on our team and our mission, and we think we're ready for the game. But I think we were like a 4 or 5 point favorite going in after beating Indiana in the Mid-East Regional Finals, 92-90, Bobby Knight's undefeated team. That immediately catapulted us to the #1 ranked team in college basketball. We go that Final Four expecting to play maybe Louisville, and we beat Syracuse by 20-some points in the semifinal. And we were a big favorite to beat UCLA. But after he retired, I remember my dad said, what did Coach tell you about John Wooden retiring for tonight's game? And this was on Monday at breakfast. And I said, Dad, he didn't think it would make any difference. He said, it's making a big difference in the line. It's now a 1 point. You're only 1 point favorite. My dad did a lot of really good things in life, but he shouldn't have told me that because I was like, uh-oh, this is real. And we did not play well. We didn't deserve to win. John Wooden had retirement or not. They did beat us handily. They beat us by 5, but we were just not ourselves. But I carried this grudge around for a long time. There can't be too many people that have a grudge against John Wooden, but I've carried one for a long time that he retired. And I just so happened to meet him later, and right before he passed away, he was at the game at Pauley Pavilion, which was an exciting event for me. I was broadcasting for CBS Westwood Sports, working with Joel Myers. We're doing a scene set before the game. Kevin, what do you want to talk about? Let's talk about all those banners in Pauley Pavilion. And he said, yeah, they're like 12 UCLA banners, championships. And it was pretty impressive. And he says, welcome to CBS Game of the Week. I have All-American Kevin Grevey with me. I'm Joel Myers. We're bringing the game for you this afternoon here, Notre Dame playing UCLA. Kevin, we were walking around looking at these banners, going all the way back to the early 60s. What's your impression? And I said, I'm impressed. There's no question about it. This is like a cathedral. And John Wooden and all these championships. But I said, that 1975 banner in the corner, that could be in Rupp Arena if it wasn't for John Wooden retiring the night before the game. Oh my God. Joel Myers said, wait a second, Kevin, we're live on national TV radio. Are you sure you want to say that about Coach? I said, no, I read his pyramid of success and all of that. I've tried to downplay it. And so the game ends and he's, hey, Grevey, that story you told before the game, that was probably, you probably shouldn't have said that. I said, you really think so? We were all having a good time. And I said, you think Coach Wooden will hear about that? And he said, he's right behind you. And he said, I said, are you kidding me? John Wooden's here? He said, yeah, go up and say hi to him, Kevin. And I guarantee he'll remember you. He'll remember the game. He'll remember the 34 points you had in that championship game. He'll remember everything about you. But whatever you do, don't say that about him retiring. And I said, oh, no, I won't. But I'm Irish. And I did. And I went up. I got in line. And everybody's getting his autograph. And I go up to him and I said, Coach Wooden, I just want to say hello. I was broadcasting a game with Joel Myers, and we were just talking about this incredible program that you built here at UCLA. And I said, the last time I saw you, it was the Final Four, 1975. Kentucky played UCLA, and I was on that Kentucky team. And he looked at me, and he's like, Kevin Grevey, lefty. You had 34 points in that championship game? I said, yes, sir, I did. He said, and his daughter was next to him. She says, you were at the game. This young man here is Kevin Grevey, who played at Kentucky. Kevin, you had a nice pro career. I followed you. He was killing me with his kindness. He was so nice, such a gentleman. And I don't know why. I wish I had a mulligan. I don't know why I said it, but I said, Coach, doing the Open, we said all these banners, and I mentioned that banner in 1975 could be a Rupp Arena if you hadn't retired. And this nice man, he nearly dropped his eyeglasses when he looked at me, and he gave me this weird look, and he said, maybe if you would have played a little defense, you would have won the championship. And he walked away from me. I'm like, oh my God, the old man zinged me again. I told Bill Walton that story. He said, you're a fool. You should never disrespect John Wooden like that. And I'm like, I held a grudge. I said it. And I told some people from Mobil Oil that were big UCLA fans, said, oh, John Wooden would never do that. He would never say that to you. He said it to me. He said it to me. I'm not making it up.
I don't want to gloss over. You mentioned this a couple times, but 34 points in a championship game is unbelievable. That's honestly incredible. And not only that, I'm looking at the stats right now, 8 of 10 free throws, right? So you shot 80% from the line, 5 total rebounds, an assist, a steal. It looked like you played a little bit of defense. That's unbelievable.
Thank you. I look back on that game, and I don't think we win me scoring 34 points. We needed more contribution from everybody. And our big guys, Rick Roby and Mike Phillips and Jack Givens was a terrific freshman, and Bob Guy, everybody had subpar games. And even with my 34 points, I was hunting shots. because I saw my teammates mishandle the ball. We would enter our offense and a seamless play for Rick Roby diving to the basket. He'd catch it, he'd fumble it, or he'd miss it. And it frustrated me. And I tried to do more than I should have. But yeah, I ended with 34, but that's a real consolation to not winning the championship.
Now we go to the NBA. You're a first-year player with the Bullets. You had this coach that I liked because
Yeah,
part of Casey Jones. How'd that work out? And
Casey wasn't a big fan of rookies. I was a big fan of KC, but I don't think he was a big fan of me, the rookie. I didn't get off to a good start in my pro career. My first year was that 75-76 season. I think I averaged like 6 or 7 points a game. I had a lot of DNPs, and he told me straight up, Kevin, you're on a veteran team. That was a team that had just gone to the championship, but got swept by the Golden State Warriors. Rick Barry was the star player, and they swept the Bullet. Casey Jones was going back to those veterans. And so he told me, practice should be your game. You got to practice like this is game day. And I'll assess you at practice because you're not going to get to play much. And I didn't get to play, and it was just garbage minutes. But I remember going to practice and doing the best I could and trying to learn from my veteran players that were around me. But it was lonely and it was frustrating. It was the first real failure I think I had in basketball. And there'd be some doubt. I had a little lack of confidence. And so what did I do? I go back to Kentucky, where I was familiar after my rookie year, and rejuvenate myself playing with those players and new players. Sam Bowie had just signed. He's coming to Kentucky. Those games at Kentucky were like almost a minor league NBA game. So to be able to compete every day and get my confidence back, it helped. I'll tell you a story how hard it was to play. Casey Jones would wait till we were up by 20 or 25 points before he would empty the bench. It was awful. I've never had a chance, I felt, to really get to play. And sure enough, there's 2 stories. I was like 12th man of a 12-man roster. All of a sudden, during the middle of the year, guys are going down. Truck Robinson got hurt. Nick Weatherspoon got hurt. Clem Haskins got hurt. Dave Bing got hurt. Next thing I know, they're going to have to play me. There's 7 guys. And so Casey Jones, hey, Rook, are you ready? We're on a West Coast trip. We're in Portland. He said, Rook, you ready? I said, I've been ready since November. KC. And so CAC, yes, I'm ready. He said, I'm coming to you. I'm coming to you early in this game at Portland. Portland, my God, they had, Bill Walton, and they were a great team. They had ended up winning the championship that year. So my rookie year, first time I had any minutes, daggone it, I got hot. And I had 18 points at halftime. Wow. And so I'm feeling great about myself. Finally, I'm making it. We go out in the third quarter after warming up, and CAC said, Grevey, I'm coming to you. You're going to start here in the third quarter. And he said, okay, guys, what play do you all want to run? And like a dummy, I said, let's run 2 down. That's my play. He's, oh my God, Rookie's calling his own plays now. Rookie is calling his own plays. Hey, guys, do you believe this? He makes a few baskets and he thinks he's all pro. He's calling his own plays. He embarrassed me so bad. I played like crap the second half. That was Elvin. Most of my teammates were terrific. Elvin could be a little testy. And one last story, towards the end of the year, Casey Jones is like, hey, Grevey, you ready to go? And I said, yeah, I'm ready to play. It's like second, third, last game of the season. And he said, go in for E, Elvin Hayes. So I leaned down at the scores table, Grevey for Hayes, and Elvin's shooting a free throw. And he looks and he said, you coming in for me? And I said, yeah. And he goes, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm coming in for you. He takes the shot. He makes the second shot. The horn goes off. I'm going out on the floor. He says, no, you're not coming in for me. And I made a mistake looking at Casey Jones, and Casey said, Grevey, come on back. And I had to take myself out of the game, couldn't even get in the game when the coach was putting me in. So it was frustrating having to deal with that kind of stuff, but I learned a lot.
How about the horse tournament that year?
The CBS horse tournament was filmed in the summer of 1976 after my rookie year. And that really gave me a lot of confidence. And the only reason I represented the Bullets is Elvin was in Houston. He didn't want to do it. Wes Unseld, he was running his day school that he and his wife had just opened up. He couldn't do it. I was like the only Bullet in town. And so Bob Ferry said, "Hey, Grevey, do you have your uniform at the house?" I said, "I do." He said, "Catch a flight to Atlanta. You're going to represent the Bullets in the CBS horse contest. Are you good to go?" And he said, "I think for attending, they'll at least guarantee you $1,000. $1,000 to a rookie was a lot of money." Sure. I'm like, heck yeah. I jumped on that plane, ran there. I had no idea what I was getting into. And so grateful that the veteran players weren't around to represent us. And I did. And I advanced. I ended up beating Al Skinner, then JoJo White, then Rudy Tomjanovich to then meet Pistol Pete Maravich in the semifinals. And it was every level I went, it gave me more confidence, but I had trick shots. I had a good offhand. I had hook shots. I could jump, could make up shots. And every time you advance, you'd be on a side basket. And then I started hanging out with Paul Westphal and Pistol Pete. And I'm like, "Hey, that little spin shot you did, can you show me that?" And they're showing me it. They're sharing their tricks with me. And I was then using those against JoJo White and Rudy T. And I went all the way. And I remember my brother who was playing at the University of South Carolina. I said, "Brian, I'm here in Atlanta and I got an all expense paid for me and my wife or girlfriend. You can come on." And I said, "But just bring a jacket because I'm going to compete in the semifinal tomorrow against Pistol Pete." And they got a nice spread on the top of the Omni. And so he drove over. He comes to my room, gives me his jacket, and we're getting on the elevator. And here's this beautiful girl on the elevator. And I had my basketball uniform. And my brother said, "Kevin, that girl's pretty nice looking. You ought to say something to her." And I did. I'm feeling pretty good. And I said, "Are you going to the party tonight? Are you here for the horse contest?" He said, "I am." And I said, "Oh, well, great." I said, "Do you have a friend? This is my brother." He said, "Yeah, I have friends. I have friends up there." And I said, "Oh, cool. This is going to be a fun night." So I put on my suit. I go up to the very top. Who do I see? Pistol Pete. "Grevey, you're firing on my wife, huh?" I went, "Oh my God." My brother said, "You got no chance tomorrow." And then Pistol laughed and he was really nice. And that really led into a friendship that I had with him for years while he was playing for New Orleans and finished his career with the Celtics. And every time we would play, and Pistol was an idol of mine growing up in high school, the floppy socks and the bushy hair. And I just wanted to be like Pistol. And then to be able to get to meet him and play against him and then get to become friends with him, I was like, this is really amazing. And it was a good friendship that we had.
Next, Mike Reardon. Tell us about your first meeting with him.
Steve, if we could, before, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Sure.
I watched that game, the horse game against JoJo White, Kevin. I saw
yeah.
it was riveting. I thought I was going to click for 15 seconds. I watched the whole thing. It was great TV. And you said at the start of this interview, right, this conversation, that you had that killer instinct, right?
Mm-hmm.
You played to win. I saw that in that JoJo White game. You got H, you got him O, and then all of a sudden you did one shot where it was behind the line. You were taller than him, so I assume longer too. And you did this layup on the other side with your offhand. It was a crazy shot, and there was no way JoJo White was going to get close to making that. That's the one shot he made, as I recall.
That's right. I scouted JoJo White in his
Really?
previous. I'm trying to win this damn thing. So I'm looking at guys who can shoot, who can't shoot, who's not real good with the ball, who doesn't have a good offhand. And surprisingly, JoJo White did not have a good left hand. an offhand. He was right-handed. And I could spin the ball with either hand. I was taught how to shoot. In fact, around the basket, my high school coach always felt like you have to shoot away from the defense. So if the defense is here and you can't go back into that defender, you get shot blocked. You got to use your bias shield, use your offhand. I practiced so much with my offhand. I actually got better around the basket with my right hand than I did my left. But back in that era, if you watch old films, even the greatest, Jerry West, Oscar Robinson, John Havlicek, they didn't have good offhands.
That's right.
Wow.
They really didn't. They weren't ambidextrous. They were just strong-handed, and they never worked on that other part. And Joe White was one of those older veterans who had a weak hand. I took advantage of him using my offhand. It was good scouting, and it was taking advantage of. And who was a better basketball player? Come on. JoJo White was a great player, but he was in my element. He was in my world, horse contest. But it was fun. And Mindy Rudolph was refereeing it. They had rules that you had to abide by. And there were the greats that were competing in that. Bob Lanier and George Gervin and Paul Westphal, Pistol Pete. But it's funny, sometimes great players are not good at certain parts of the game. And I was able to pick on some of the guys. Rudy Tomjanovich, there wasn't a better jump shooter in the pro game, 6'7", great shooter. And he was early in my CBS horse contest, and I beat him at his best, his jumper. I just matched him jumper for jumper. And they had to edit that thing. We must have made 20 straight jump shots, he and I. And I was like, I'm not going to yield. I'm not going to go away from the jump shot. I had the lead. I kept doing it. He kept making it, kept doing it, kept making it. Finally, he missed, and I felt a crack in Rudy T. And Rudy T ended up working for the Lakers. He was the head coach.
Mm-hmm.
I was scouting for 20 years for the Lakers, for Mitch Kupchak. When Rudy joined, and we get in the car, and I said, Rudy, it's so great to see you. I haven't seen you, I think, since the filming of the CBS horse contest at the Omni. He said, damn it, Grevey. I hated losing to you. I did not like that. That really upset me. I brought my wife, my daughter to Atlanta, and you sent me on an early exit. You don't forget those kind of things. And it was funny, Rudy. I was finally able to get one on Rudy because he was a great player too.
That's awesome. We'll make sure to link that below if you're interested. It is definitely worth a watch. It was really fun to watch that game. And I won't, if I could, I'm going to ask one more and I'm going to give it back to you, Steve. But you said that Pistol Pete was a player you admired and a player you wanted to be like. One of the things that Steve and I have tried to do during this offseason show is take the players from the past and link them to the players of the present. Who was most like Wilt Chamberlain? Who was most like Pistol Pete? Who is most like Jerry West? I'm curious, Kevin, as you watch the game now, who resembles the style of play that you had in the NBA? Who's the Kevin Grevey of today?
That's a great question. As a NBA scout, when we sit around the room and we're talking about young up-and-coming players who are in the draft, we use comps. Who does he remind you of? Who does he play? What skill set does he have that reminds you? And sometimes I date myself because when I'm sitting with these younger scouts, I'll pull up a guy and I'll say, I was with the Hornets last year. 2 years ago, we drafted Brandon Miller, who was Alabama All-American freshman. And we're like, who does he remind you of? And some of the younger scouts were like, man, he reminds me of Kawhi Leonard a little bit. 6'7", and guys, that's a good comp. But I have one better. He's Bobby Dandridge. And they're like, who's Bobby Dandridge? I say he's a Hall of Famer, teammate of mine with the Washington Bullets. And Mitch Kupchak, oh my God. Guys, you got to Google Bobby Dandridge. He was only the best small forward in the NBA. What's wrong with you guys? But your answer or your question, I'll give you an answer. When I was first scouting, Chris Mullin, left-hander, 6'5", 6'6". Good God, Chris was great. he was a better player than I was, but that's how I played. And then later on, JJ Redick, who was a
Okay.
great shooter at Duke and 16, now coached with the Lakers. JJ, and I got actually met JJ Redick, my daughter's best friend. JJ's from Roanoke, Virginia, and I'm living here in Virginia. And he would train here in Washington, D.C., and he was dating my daughter's close friend. He came to my house, Jay, and I spoke to Jay, but I had to keep distance because he was with Duke and I'm an NBA scout. And now, statute of limitations, there's no problem now. But then I was like, oh my God, I don't know if JJ should be here in my house. And anyway, I spoke to him. I said, he was with Shadley Randolph,
Oh, yeah,
another
for
big,
the Celtics.
that was his good friend. And the two of them were here at the house. And I said, listen, it's nice seeing y'all. I got to go. I have a tennis match. I'm playing a tennis match. I get it in my car and I'm blocked. JJ Redick locked his keys in his car and I missed my tennis match. I came back in, called AAA. I said, JJ, if I told Coach K this, what would he do? He wouldn't be very happy with you. You owe me one, pal. I can't wait to see Jay again and remind him, Jay, you locked your keys in the car. I'll never forgive you for that. I missed my tennis match.
Jose, you want to ask the obvious next JJ Redick question?
Steve, thank you. It's chomping at the bit when you said JJ Redick. I've been sitting on this one, and it may not be terribly fair a question to ask, but I'm so curious. JJ Redick, while we're on the subject, new Laker coach, said, and I want to get your thoughts on this, said not too long ago, not about your era, but more about Cousie's era, that he played against plumbers and firemen. He got a lot of grief for that. Jerry West.
What did he say? I'm sorry, Jose.
Oh, I'm sorry. He said that essentially he alluded to the fact or implied that Bob Cousie's numbers didn't matter as much because, and this is a quote, he played against plumbers and firemen. Effectively saying he played against guys who weren't that good, right? These are guys who had to get second jobs. They weren't that talented. And then Anthony Edwards recently said that Michael Jordan was the only one who had any skill in the 90s, and Magic Johnson and other folks have come out against him. And to me, it's wild because we always want to say who was better, Wilt or Shaq, who was better, the 84 Lakers or the 96 Bulls. And it's impossible, I think, really to do that apples to apples. But when you hear these kind of things, people devaluing the play of the past, what do you think about that? What does that make you think?
It's disrespecting the game. I think it's ridiculous. I do. Listen, in my era in the 70s and 80s, these guys were incredible, okay? They were ballers for their time. Maybe their careers were a little shorter because we didn't have massage therapists, we didn't have chefs, we didn't fly charter planes. We had it a lot tougher. And the money was so bad that some guys had to be plumbers and carpenters and teachers and coaches. You had to get a second job. And I looked up to those guys before me, the people that we talked about, Jerry West and Oscar Robinson and all those greats, watching those guys play. So to say that about another era is, I just think, foolish. This is the way I look at it. Just go Google and watch those guys play and watch how rough it was. The game today, for me to disparage the game today would be foolish. I think it's a great game. It's fun, it's exciting, it's faster, it's more athletic. But there are some things I don't like about the game today. And I don't think we utilize all the players on the floor. There's not a lot of free-flowing movement. There's not a lot of plays and structure. Steve and I, we were talking about centers, how centers have been passed by. All they become is screeners, passers, rebounders. And some of them we asked to be able to shoot three-point shots. So the game has evolved. I love the game. I love watching the old players play on video, on the black and white, and I love the game today. And I like to see the evolve. The game wouldn't be what it is today if it wasn't for the Cousies and if it wasn't for those older guys. So I think it's just a shallow thing to say about the period before you.
What I was going to before was you told me a little story about the first time you met up with Mike Reardon.
Mm.
And
Oh
you had
man,
a little workout.
he had a nickname, Jose. It was Iron Mike. Anybody that's named Iron Mike, you better watch out. All right. Mike Reardon was one of the toughest 6'3", 6'4" players in the NBA. Nobody got more out of his skill set and his body than Mike Reardon. And it happened to be the guy that I'm going to replace on the Washington Bullets. Iron Mike wasn't going to give up that job easily in his 9th or 10th year in the NBA, and I'm a rookie. And he didn't. He won the job, and I never got to play my rookie year behind Mike. I was just getting token minutes. But when I arrived in Washington, Bob Ferry, my general manager, I get there in July. The season starts in October. He said, Grevey, I want you to call this number. This is Mike Reardon, and work out with Mike. He said, you're in shape? I said, oh, hell yeah. I've been doing the Kentucky running program, lifting weights, playing every afternoon. He said, good. Call Mike. He'll work you out. So I go to Annapolis, Maryland. I go to his house. Mike was gracious enough. He said, you want me to drive or I'll drive? I said, I'll drive, Mike. And I get in my car and we drive to Annapolis Naval Academy. We go on the track. We run. Jose, we lift weights. We play. We shoot. Then we do noon hour. And I get there at 9 o'clock. That's 3 hours of practice. And I'm like, I'm dead. And then after noon hour at the Naval Academy with the plebes and the officers, these guys weren't that good, but you're going up and down full court. And now it's 12 o'clock. Man, I just couldn't wait to get back to my apartment and lay down. I dropped Mike. I'm taking him back to his driveway. And he said, now, listen, we're going to Maryland this afternoon at 3 o'clock. Go ahead and get lunch. I'll pick you up at your apartment. And we're going to play open gym. Lefty Giselle has his players and the pros that are in the city. There'll be Adrian Dantley will be there, Ricky Sobers, Jeff Rulin, all these guys. I'm like, really? He said, oh, yeah, we're going to play from 3 to 6 over there. I'm like, holy cow. I could barely walk that afternoon when I got back to my apartment. But Mike showed me what a pro has to do to play in this league. And it was just great lessons that I learned from Mike Reardon.
It's so interesting to me because when I see someone excel in college, right, just have a phenomenal career, great shooter, you see all the potential in the world, and then they get to the NBA. And in my mind's eyes, as a fan, I think before I started digging a little deeper, you think it's the same game, man. It's the same game. But the people you're playing against are different. It's 10 feet high. It's still the same, but it's a different game, right? It's a different level of competition. Is that fair to say between college and the NBA?
I think it goes back to the scouting. And Kevin, you do that. But when you walk into a gym at a college, one of the things, and we talked about this, you assess right away what kind of work ethic that person has. Because the person who wants to put in the time, Kobe Bryant's a great example. He's going to advance his game. And if he doesn't, and we talked about a couple of people like that, but I don't want to get into that, but those people don't advance their game and they end up out of the game in a year or two.
Really what it comes down to, yes, you have to have the physical gifts to be able to play at that next level, the NBA. It's a huge jump from college to pro. It's a high level. Guys are knocking on the door trying to get into the NBA. What's keeping a guy from the G League or a fringe player from making it? There's only so many jobs and it's competitive. There's a couple things. First of all, you have to have the skill. All right. You got to have today's NBA skill. Right. You got to be a versatile, wiry, athletic, skilled player that can shoot, dribble, pass, who can defend an open court. You don't have, the game was packed in and you have a big 7-footer standing back there protecting the rim like a goalie. That big 7-footer may be out on the floor. And so you're naked defensively. And it requires a better defender to play the game today than it did in my era. A more versatile player who can switch and guard guards, guard forwards. So I'm giving you a little bit of the kind of the skill set that it takes. But what separates? What separates is a talented guy that has the work ethic of Iron Mike Reardon, a guy who's willing to put 6, 8, 10 hours in. Not everybody can do that day after day after day. You might be able to do it at training camp, or you can do it for a short period of time, but you start losing interest. It's painful. It's hard. It's a grind. But if you love the process, if you love the work, and this is what is going to make you better, there are very few people that have ever put themselves to the point of failure. There was a exercise program called Super Slow, and it was invented about 30 or 40 years ago, and it was track and field guys who were doing it. And you go real slow with the weight, and then you even go slower on the resistance way down, slow and slower, to the point where you can't do it anymore. The muscles are quivering and you fail. You do that with your legs, you do it with your buttocks, you do it with your core, and you do it with your arms, and you do it with your shoulders. When you're done, you're releasing so much acid that you're dry heaving. And you do that. Now, who in their right mind would do a super slow? I was doing it because I knew it would make me stronger, and I did it for about 3 years. Now, I got used to it, and I got used to the pain, and I got used to the failure, and I look forward to the failure. What I'm saying, I did that to my body. I also did that running. I would run 220s. I would run them in 32 seconds, walk across the football field 32 seconds, do it again in 32 seconds, and I would see how many I could do until I couldn't run it in 32 seconds. And it's amazing how your body builds up the tolerance, and I could get there to where I could go to 12 or 13 or 14 220s until where I couldn't run it in 32 seconds or less. And then I would do that shooting, and I would shoot 1,000 shots at game speed, and I'd work up to that. And I felt like I had to do that because I wasn't the most talented. I didn't want anybody to outwork me, and I would try to find another teammate of the same mindset that had that kind of work ethic that you could share, and we could each push ourselves through it. Mike Reardon was when I was a freshman or a rookie in the NBA, and then Mitch Kupchak came after my rookie year, and he joined me. He was the same damn way. He was a little obsessed like I was, and we would push one another and do a lot of those things together. And I think did Iceman do that? George Gervin? Hell no. He was 6'9" guard. He didn't have to. I had to if I was going to play 10 years in the NBA and stay fit, be the best conditioned. And so it was just knowing who you are and how you could fit, and then just not going to be denied.
One of the things, I'm sorry, Steve.
Go.
I'm sorry. We were lucky enough to talk to Scott Foster about a week ago. And one of the big revelations to me was the amount of work he puts in. And there was always, for me, a real respect with referees, but I have so much more after talking to him. And hearing you talk about what you just talked about, to me, is eye-opening, because as a fan, you just sit there and you see somebody miss an open shot and you go, why didn't you make that? We're so dumb as fans sometimes. But the amount of work that it puts in, that you all have to put in to have that 10-year NBA career is pretty amazing. And this has been real eye-opening for me. You did play for 10 years. And in looking at your stats, I found it interesting that you were in the league during the transition to the three-point play.
Oh, yeah.
And that changed the game. And I remember initially it didn't really have much of an impact. You watch games from the 80s where the line is there, but everybody's playing in the post still.
That's right.
It took a while to really acclimate. And now, you're seeing 90 shots a game. What was it like for you playing in that, what was it, 79-80 season when the three-point shot came into play? You took some and you made some. What was that like for you? And what was it like for the NBA in general?
Coaches didn't use it much unless it was end of a half or quarter or end of a game. I remember it was not even discussed in training camp until like maybe the second or third day before our first game. And Dick Motta was the coach. He was annoyed because the rules, he said, the next thing we're going to do is play with a red, white, and blue ball. We bring the AB in. Now we got cheerleaders. We got music in the arena. We've got the three-point shot. Alarm goes off when somebody makes. It's a damn circus. He said, what happened? What's going on with the NBA? And the purists, the red Arbacks, and they were not happy about this. They didn't think this was a good idea. And so almost to a point where, okay, damn it, you're going to bring this in. You're not going to have any coaches part of the rules committee. Nobody's going to shoot the three-point shot. Screw the three-point shot. We didn't have it at training camp. We didn't have a three-point line. And even at some of the arenas we went to, it was taped on. It wasn't even painted on. It was the infancy of the game. And I remember I hit the first three-point shot that on the first game against the New York Knicks. I caught the ball. It was about 5-6 minutes into the game, caught it squared up, and I hear, no, in front of the bench, and I knocked it down. And at the time, I thought I made the first three-pointer in NBA history. A lot of people did, but it turned out to be Chris Ford, who beat me maybe by a minute or two.
Wow.
So anyway, by the end of the season, Jose, Steve, there was a thing called the Grevey rule on the Bullets back then. Nobody was allowed to shoot the three-point shot but Grevey. And if he sees it, he feels it, he can shoot it. I was one of the league leaders in the three-point shot that year, and it was like 37% or something.
Exactly, 37%.
But that was considered a high percentage back then.
Sure.
It was weird.
Kevin, there's two things. One thing I want to do, I want to take us through that championship season. And then the other thing I wanted to do, and I wanted to throw in, if Jose would work with me, throw some names out and just like a 1-sentence or 2-sentence reaction. Make sense?
Yeah.
But first, take us through that championship season.
That was my third year in the league, and I was fortunate to be one of the starting guards on that team with Tommy Henderson in the backcourt. Bob Ferry was probably the reason we won the championship, our general manager. He made the trade, Truck Robinson for Tommy Henderson. Tommy becomes a starter. He signs Bobby Dandridge to a free agent contract. Bobby Dandridge was in Milwaukee, joins the Bullets. And Phil Chenier, who was a great player in the backcourt, injured his back, and they moved me from small forward to shooting guard. So it's Tommy and myself in the backcourt. Phil Chenier's beat up, coming off the bench a little bit. And the front line, Jose, you said when you introduced me, Bobby Dandridge, Hall of Fame. Wes Unseld, Hall of Fame. Elvin Hayes, Hall of Fame. That front line was as good a front line in the NBA for about 10 or 20 years. Then the Bird, Parrish, McHale came a little bit later, but our front line was the dominant part of that team. And we felt like we could win every game we took the floor on when we were healthy. But that was a big part of that season, the regular season. We still today have the worst regular season record for any team to have won a championship. 1978, no team has had, I think we were 43 and 39 maybe that regular season. But so we were like fourth place in our division, but we got healthy at the right time. Wow. Wes and Elvin were hungry as could be. They wanted to win a championship. They had been swept the two previous times to the Milwaukee Bucks with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Lou Alcindor at the time, and then Rick Barry and the Golden State Warriors. And we beat. They had a mini series back then, best out of 3. It wasn't a best out of 7. And we beat the Atlanta Hawks with Hubie Brown. He had a hell of a team. Tree Rollins and not Eddie Jordan, Eddie Johnson,
Yeah.
Fast Eddie. And
Spud Webb?
No, Spud wasn't on that team. Tom McMillan was on that team. Anyway, they were really good. Their star player was John Drew.
Yeah.
And we beat them. And then we play San Antonio Spurs with Iceman, Special K, Larry Keenan. They were terrific. We beat them. They had the home court advantage. Then we beat Philadelphia, and that was the we owe you one after Philadelphia was 2-0 against the Portland Trailblazers the year before and lost 4 in a row. So their mantra that season is, we owe you one, fans. We're going to win a championship. And they were built for a championship with Dr. J, Doug Collins. They had 3 or 4 all-stars in the starting lineup. Henry Bibby, Lloyd B. Free, Daryl Dawkins. They were really good. But we beat them in 6. And now, here we go to the World Championship. We don't have a home court advantage against Seattle either. We didn't have a home court advantage in any of those games because we had such a miserable regular season record. And we went to the max in every series but that Philadelphia series that we happened to win in 6. And we go to 7-game. And there was only one team at the time that had ever won a Game 7 on the road. And that was the Lakers at home got beat by the Celtics. Was that 69? 69.
My favorite year, yes.
Oh, you would remember that.
I don't recall.
Yeah, only one team had ever done that. And here we are, Game 7, going to Seattle at the Seattle Coliseum, a huge underdog. And there it was, the leadership, though. I just remember Wes Unseld on our day off before the game. He said, is there anything you wouldn't do to win this Game 7, win a championship? He said, any of you, is there anything? There is nothing in this life. He said, I would eat my right arm off right now to win a championship. And I'm like, whoa, he wants it bad. And he ended up becoming MVP of the series. Wes, people don't really know what a great player that guy was. There's only 2 players in the history of the game that was Rookie of the Year and Most Valuable Player of the Year, and that was Wilt and Wes. Wes was like maybe Charles Barkley when he came into the league, athletic, could run, but his knees got all banged up, and he became more of a stationary center, just using power moves, but he had such great hands. He could do something. It's not humanly possible. Shaq can't do this. There's nobody. And if they can, call me up. I want to see it done. Wes Unseld, Steve, you may have heard this. He could take the ball standing under the basket, okay? Here's the rim, the basket. He throws the ball up and bounces it off the backboard, jumps, turns in midair, and then uncoils an over-the-head pass to the other backboard. It's 94 feet, and it's like a missile. I've tried to do that. I can't even get to half court. It's unbelievable. I don't know if I could throw a baseball pass, but Wes had that kind of strength, and boy, did he use it with the outlet pass. If he can go backboard to backboard, it was amazing.
How did Wes help you out with John Long?
John Long and I never saw eye to eye. He played for the Detroit Pistons, shooting guard. I was shooting guard for the Bullets. There were just sometimes in the course of a season, there's some bad blood, and it happened. And we would get into a fight. It wasn't like throwing the gloves down and fist fighting, but it was elbows and sucker punches and clawing and scratching. And I remember going out on the floor and here it is, Detroit Pistons, John Long, here we go again. I go to jump ball. He says, so Grevey, we going to get it on again tonight or not? And I said, we just might. Sure enough, there's John grabbing my jersey. I get a technical foul. He gets a technical foul. We're going at it. And then finally, Wes Unseld said, hey, Grevey, what is going on with you and John Long? I said, he's back up to being an asshole. He said, I'll tell you what, guys, let's come back with it's called a get play. And a get play is you just run your man into Wes Unseld and let him get the screen. So I'm a guard and I enter the ball to the forward, and Wes said, come full speed at me. Just go shoulder to shoulder. I'm all right, big fella. So I enter the ball, and John Long's guard me real tight, and I just run beeline to the basket like I'm going to get a give and go. And there's Wes Unseld. He steps right into his path and hits John Long, lifted John off the floor. John drops to the floor. And I'm like, oh my God, he killed him. He killed John Long. Of course, Wes gets a foul called. There's a dead ball. We come into our huddle. I don't know if John's going to play anymore. Sure enough, dude's pretty tough. He stood up. He tells the trainer, yeah, I can still go. So we go back out on the floor, and I come up to next to John. I didn't say anything to him. And he looked at me. He said, so you got Wes Unseld doing your dirty work for you now, huh? I said, yes, I do. Never had another problem with John Long. And Wes was that kind of teammate. He could sense what's going on. He always had your back. Even if you were struggling, I'd hear somebody keep tweeting, keep shooting it, Grevey, keep shooting it. It was Wes. He was just a great teammate.
Love that.
Jose, you could pitch in on this, but we'll throw a few names out. Don Nelson, quick sentence or two.
Nelly, ugliest free throw that's ever shot in the NBA. Okay. Little pirouette.
Good hand, yep.
Great coach, though.
Why?
He was a player's coach. He played 16 years, I think, in the NBA, and he just knew. He had a sense of his players, his team. He was innovative. He would take chances. He was before his time, double downs on defense, help defense, inversion. He called it open. Forwards become guards. I was playing in Utah, and remember they had Mark Eaton, a 7-footer, and we had on our team Tiny Archibald at the end of his career. And he said, Tiny, you're going to jump ball. He said, what are you talking about, coach? Yeah, you're going to jump. Mark Eaton. He just did it just because he thought it would be fun. And here's the biggest guy in the NBA and the shortest guy, and he jumped center. Nelly was just having a good time. He was a great coach.
Gene Shue.
Sandlot. Gene Shue could call plays, draw up plays that we never worked on. Like when you play Sandlot basketball, you said, hey, you go over here, you go over here. He would draw up a play based on what he thought there was an advantage that we had on the other team. Never worked on it in practice, never worked on it. He would just draw up a play. We're like, he said, you guys got it? And we're like, now, are you sure you want to do this, Gene? He said, hell yeah, let's do it. I think it's going to work. And it would work, and he would jump up and down. He was so happy, and it kept the game fun. I love that about Gene.
Larry Bird.
One badass dude, man. How many words do I get to say?
Whatever you want. It's your show.
Larry came into the league towards the end of my career, and I watched him play on TV, and I kept thinking, this dude can't jump. He looks like a tuna. He can't be very good. He played at Indiana State. Come on. What kind of schedule did they have? Okay, they made it to the championship. He can't be that good. And then we played him an exhibition game. He's a rookie. And he made the game look so easy. And I had to guard him. We were trying different people. Paul Pressey was one of the best defensive players in the NBA. And we had him on our team in Milwaukee. And Nelly, Don Nelson, said, I want you to body up on him. I want you to deny him the ball. And he would just toy with Pressey. Pressey had and I remember coming off the floor. I said, Press, he's pretty good. He said, he's friggin' unbelievable. The dude's 6'10", can do anything he wants. If he wants a pass, rebound, shoot, he can do it. He's one of the best that ever played the game.
Yeah. Jerry West.
Legend, man. I love Jerry West. I got to work with him in LA. Jerry West was maybe the greatest player of his era for a few years. You debate who was the greatest player back then. Was it Russell? Was it Wilt? For a while there, it was Jerry. He was probably the best general manager that the game had for a while.
Second.
Second.
I'm kidding.
And he was probably the best scout, assessor of talent that there ever was. Whatever he did, he was great at. He was the most blessed guy, but one of the more complex people too. He was a good-looking, great athlete, unbelievable competitor, accomplished so much in life. But sadly, he was miserable for a while, a big part of his life. And if you read his book, West by West, he gets into the depression and the things he had. But he sure was fun to be around. I loved and learned a lot from Jerry West.
Jose, you got anybody you want to throw out?
I do. I've got one, and this might need to be the end unless you have another one, Steve. But
I'm thinking about it. Go ahead.
Okay, but Kevin, you called out his name a couple of times, and he was one of the best athletes to me, watching when I started falling in love with the game, and that's Iceman, George Gervin. He made the game just look effortless.
Yeah.
He had finger rolls. It just looked like he was doing ballet out there. So I want to ask you about George Gervin.
All right, this will sum it up. I'll tell you George Gervin's story where I'm playing them, and it was George didn't do what I'm going to tell you in the playoffs. He did it in a regular season game. He was leading the league in scoring at about 35, 36 a game. I had to guard him every night, and it was daunting having to chase him around. I would try to discourage him from behind because he would lay the ball back, and I blocked a couple shots. I would strip the ball when he get back there, but he's doing the finger rolls. He's doing it everything. And so anyway, we go to San Antonio, and Dick Motta said, look, Grevey, I want you to don't focus so much on deep. I want you to look for your offense too. It takes you out of your game. You know, Iceman is not going to come off screens. We're watching film, and sure enough, I see spots where I can shoot the ball. So we start the game, and damn, Ice goes right to work. He scores on a finger roll. Then he hits a three-pointer. Then he posts me up. And we're not 4 minutes in the game, and he's got 12 or 14 points. And I haven't even looked at the basket yet. I haven't had a chance. And he sees a guy coming off the bench. He said, hey, Grevey, is he coming in for you? And I'm like, hell, I don't know, Ice. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I think he's coming in for you. And so I said, I don't know. And then we come back down. I come back down the floor. He said, hey, Greve, go ahead and get you one. I said, give me one what? Go ahead. I'm not going to guard you. Just go ahead and shoot it. I'm like, this son of a bitch is toying with me. I caught the ball, and I look, and I see a big grin on his face. I'm wide open, and I knock down the jumper. Sure enough, the horn blows. I come in. Here comes Larry Wright for me. I sit down on the bench, and I'm like, that dirty dog. He didn't want me to come out. He was thinking he's going to get 100 tonight with me guarding him. Now I messed up his rhythm by having to sit the bench. I'm like, that Iceman's a dirty dog.
Jose, you got anything?
Go ahead, Steve.
No, you got anybody else?
Yeah, you know,
Best player you ever played against?
You might be surprised, but it was only for a brief moment. It was David Thompson.
Oh, he was great. He could jump out of the place.
I did not. I played with him in college all-star game after our senior years. He and I are the same age. Do you know I never saw him play until Hawaii, the Aloha Classic for the All-Americans. And he comes from NC State, I'm from Kentucky, and now we're on the same floor. I saw him on TV, But that's the different era that we played. I never played against him in summer ball, AAU. We didn't have such a thing. All I did was, while I was on the floors, and was watch David. I could not believe the shit he was doing. Teammates never did that stuff, flying through the air the way he did. And we had the same agent, Norm Blast from New York, and David and I became good friends. And when he was at Denver, started out in the ABA, they merged to the NBA, I would see him. And for about 2 or 3 years, you just couldn't, he'd just jump in the air and shoot his jump shot. What is a mere mortal going to do? The only thing he could do was deny him the ball, keep him from catching it. And the last thing he would do is never let him get a breakaway layup. So I couldn't go to the offensive glass. I always had to know where David is. So I took away his layups and I tried to deny him the ball. But when he caught it, he's going to score. He was so unbelievable. That era had a problem. It was the drugs, and David got caught up in that, and sad. It did take away from his game. I was having lunch today with a guy from NC State, and he said, David Thompson, we know how great he was at NC State. Michael Jordan was supposed to go to NC State. I said, really? I thought all along he was going to say, no, he was ready to go to NC State. His idol was David Thompson. And then Dean Smith had a brilliant recruiting ploy. He said, look, David, you could go to NC State, but you're always going to be judged by David Thompson. And some things you're going to do better than him, and some things you might not. But you're going to have that shadow of David Thompson following you everywhere you go if you go. But if you come to North Carolina, you'll create your own aura. And I was like, wow, he got him. He got him. David was great. Michael was a little better, but Michael would have probably gone to NC State.
That's interesting. Best team you ever played against?
I swear it has to be that Portland Trailblazer team with Bill Walton. If I can remember, it was Bill Walton, Maurice Lucas, Johnny Davis, David Twardzik. These are not Hall of Fame. Yeah. There wasn't Gross, the rookie, and they won the championship.
They did some other stuff on the bench too, I think.
Yeah, they had some, but these were all good players with Jack Ramsey, but Bill Walton was so incredible. He was the best passing big man of our era. And I remember just getting backdoored and that ball being zipped over your shoulder. If you turned your head, he was going to find that teammate of his. He was such a great passer. Probably the best passing big man maybe the game ever saw.
And Kevin, wasn't Bill Walton one of the guys who probably could throw that 94-foot pass like you mentioned, Wes would throw? Because I
guarantee Bill could probably do it standing under the basket, but not in midair.
Right. The outlet pass. His outlet pass was just
catching it in midair. Right. Kevin Love today would probably be the closest that could do it. And Kevin Love's uncle played with Wes Unseld in the Baltimore Bullets.
That's right.
Stan Love.
Yeah.
Stan Love. And Stan told Kevin, this is how a big man throws an outlet. My teammate Wes Unseld was the greatest outlet passer, and he had Wes talk to Kevin, his son. Kevin Love idolized Wes Unseld, and it's full circle.
Yeah. Jose, you got anything else?
I'm good. We've got more questions, but I do think we're running out of time.
Well, so good.
Yeah,
this is a lot of fun. This is fun for me to talk about the game the way we did. It was great fun.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. No, and we're grateful. That's it, man. Watching. We hope you learned something. This discussion with NBA champion Kevin Grevey has been incredible, and we're so grateful for your time. As usual, we're grateful you found us. Please like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff means the world to us, and it helps us. And make sure to join us next time on 13 Rules NBA Random Thoughts Overtime Podcast. Steve, Kevin, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jose. See you, Steve.